Okay, welcome everyone. We have a great crowd here today. Thanks for coming out. My name is Corey Fada Hartley. I'm Assistant Dean for Curriculum Coordination of the College of Natural Science. And I help to run the STEM Teaching Essentials workshops with a great team. And I'm going to introduce them quickly. There's two people not here today, so I'll say them first so I don't forget. Niraj Butch from the College of Engineering and Georgina Montgomery from Lyman Briggs College. And then here today we have Laura Bix from the College of Ag and Natural Resources, Dinah Breedis from the College of Engineering, Stephen Thomas from College of Natural Science, and Suzanne Lang from the College of Ag and Natural Resources. So we work together to identify needs as they relate to STEM teaching and learning and host these workshops. Before I introduce our first one today, I will say our next workshop is September 11th. It will be given by Professor Kendra Charavello on how to build cooperative teams in your classrooms. And she'll give a lot of really useful information that you can take directly into your class. She's given the workshop before, and it's always very popular. That one is planned to be over in BPS. Same time as this, BPS room 1425. If we get this many people to register again, we'll have to move somewhere else. So hopefully we have to do that. That'll be a good thing. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the semester, Kelly Millenbaugh, and I'm going to pull up this so I get it right because her title is long. She's a Senior Associate Dean in the College of Ag and Natural Resources and the Director of Academic and Student Affairs over in the college. Kelly was actually part of the team that founded this workshop to begin with. So had been previously organizing the workshops and part of the team and really got this started. And it's been a very successful endeavor that the rest of us have kind of taken over from others as it has moved on. Kelly has numerous experiences and leadership roles here at MSU, but I think the thing that sums it up best is that she was the inaugural winner of the Simon Chavukala Award for Academic Leadership at MSU. And she's a leader that many of us recognize, and we all appreciate her work. So today she's going to talk to us about getting started on your first day of class. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. One more announcement. When we do ask you to talk, please wait until I get to you with this microphone. You'll note that it's not amplifying my voice right now. It's for the recording. So we want to make sure that we get everything recorded. So if you'll just raise your hand, I'll come to you, and then we'll give you the microphone.
Thanks, Corey. Can everybody hear me okay? I put the mic on just to make sure, and actually, if it gets too loud, let me know. But one of the things to think about before we get started, when you're in a large classroom like this, even though I definitely have an outside voice, I do a lot of screaming and yelling at football games, don't assume that the people in the audience can actually hear you. And so any chance you take, make sure that you are doing what you can to also ensure that your audience is able to hear you as easily as possible. So I wanted to just share, I'm actually really shocked at the turnout here because I don't know if anybody picked up that there was a spelling error in my abstract at all. And it was, you only get one change to make a first impression. And I was like, well, not such a great first impression to make. I was also sharing with the folks in our office today that I'm really nervous to be here today. It's really interesting to have kind of that nervousness back in my system. I give a lot of talks, but I talk in spaces where it might be around some of our projects that we're working on, et cetera. But it reminds me a lot of the first day I came into class and the nervous energy that I had, and also reminds me of the nervous energy that our students come into their first day of class and subsequent from there. So I'm going to do things a little bit different. There's Mark Urban Lorraine used to run this session, and I'm actually going to change things up a little bit because I want to start at a different starting point. And hopefully get you engaged, talking to one another in not a uncomfortable way, but in ways in which you can also talk and we can have larger conversations and discussions. So I borrowed liberally from a lot of folks. These slides will be made available for everyone, and there's links that are in here, and so I've got some paper material for you, but I will, a lot of it is in the links, and you can just click into them and take a look at the information from there. Okay, so who am I and what I do? What do I do? So one thing that I have started to do a little bit differently is this is how I've introduced myself. Hi. Thank you. My name is Kelly Millenbaugh, and I am a co-owner of the Green Bay Packers. I really am. I have one whole share of the Green Bay Packers. But the reason that I share that with people is that while I absolutely love the job that I'm in, that's not all of who I am. And sometimes when you think about our students, what they see is they see you as a faculty member, as somebody that potentially is unattainable for them. Think about how you might engage with them a little bit differently. And it's really interesting. I've used this a lot of different times where I start with talking about being a co-owner of the Green Bay Packers, and holy cow, does that get everybody's attention in a hurry? And then there's chatter of, do you think it's real? Are you sure? Oh my gosh, what is she still doing here? And then I tell them it's absolutely worth no money whatsoever, just voting and bragging rights. So the other thing I want to share with you is, why do I do what I do? I have the absolute honor and privilege of being on this campus because students choose to come here for their education. None of us would be in our positions if our students didn't make the active choice of being here. And so to me, they are the most important individuals on this campus. It is up to us to be able to ensure that we are giving them the best education that they possibly can, that we engage with them and help them grow as whole individuals. That yes, they might have academics that are a very important part of what they do on a day-to-day basis, but that's not all of who they are. Just like your jobs here are not all of who you are. My hope is that we start to move the pendulum back a little bit more to being much more student-centered. We've swung a lot, in my opinion, to obviously we are an active research organization and that is a top priority here, but we do not exist without our students. And so my hope is that you will always keep that in the back of your mind and that no two students come to the table with the same experiences. They have different things that they have gone through, that they've experienced, that might be challenging them today, might be challenging them tomorrow. And we need to ensure that the way in which we engage with them is with dignity and respect. Doesn't mean that they're always right, but we also need to ensure that we are doing the best we can to ensure that they can do the best that they can. So, while you are still chewing, what I would really like for you to do is, we've got a lot of folks from different colleges that are present here today. What I would really like you to do, because I know a lot of you are actually kind of, you brought yourselves in as groups of individuals who already know each other. I'd like you to actually talk to somebody that you've never met before. Figure out who that is, and no, Luke and Puyan, you can't talk to one another because we all know you know each other. And talk a little bit about what is it going to look like for you in this coming year? Are you going to be teaching a new class at MSU? Are you essentially teaching for the very first time any place? Are you coming back and teaching a different class? What does it look like? What I'd like you to do is talk about those. Before you do that, make sure you introduce yourself to the person that you end up talking to. And then also, if you can, highlight the one thing that causes you the most angst going into class for your first day or even into the semester. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to just talk, and you can talk to more than one person, but have that conversation, and then we're going to do a kind of a share back. So have at it for 5 minutes. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap once. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap once. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap twice. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap 4 times. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap 5 times. Awesome, it worked the way it was supposed to. All right, that's actually a little trick you can use if you need to actually pull people back together. is you work your way kind of around the room, and as you get the group to essentially join you, it actually pulls people back together relatively easily. Took you guys 5 times, but when you actually do it, oftentimes you may not even get past into number 2. Oftentimes the first time somebody does it, everybody recognizes it, and it goes down really, really quickly. So just a couple of people. Tell me, how did this feel? How did it feel to talk to each other?
Welcoming.
Welcoming. What else? Interesting. What else? How about on this side of the room? Awkward. Can you say why it felt awkward?
Well, I have trouble talking.
Okay. Trouble talking to people. And anything? How about one more on this side of the room? How did that feel? Yeah. It was engaging. So just think about it from the standpoint of what does that do for students who are in the classroom when they come back the next time? What does it do for them? Anybody? Gives them some camaraderie. What else? Somebody had their hand up. Yeah. Right. At least they know one other person in class as well. So think about those kinds of things on your very first day in terms of how do you engage those students on the very first day? And we're going to talk about some of this as we move through here. What I'd like to get to next, and this is just a shout it out loud, what do you hope to get out of today's workshop? Why'd you come?
Self-confidence.
Self-confidence. I thought maybe you were going to say, I just came for the food.
I know not to say that.
Yes.
To see if there's something I should change on my syllabus before I pass it out.
To see if there might be some changes for your syllabus before you pass it out. Cho, did you have something?
I planned some stuff out. I just want to make sure that I'm on the right track.
Okay, so plan some stuff out. Make sure you're on the right track. Anybody else want to share anything? Scott? How to get students engaged. Okay. So I'm hopeful that we're going to hit on all of that and a little bit more as we go through this. And part of what I'm wanting to be able to do is make sure at any time, if you want to divert off, let's talk about things if you're feeling that, wait a second, we're rolling through this a little bit too quickly. What's important to you on the first day of class? Put yourself in the role of the student right now. You're walking into that first day of class. I'm sorry, Scott, I'm going to pick on you, 40 years ago. What was important for you the first day you walked into class?
I've only been here 33 years.
Yes. Put yourself in the role of the student, though. Put yourself in the role of the student.
I want to know the expectations.
Want to know the expectations. So just sidebar, Scott Winterstein's my academic parent, so I can tease him a little bit more than I can tease other people. He was my master's and PhD advisor. Yeah. Yes. Setting expectations. What are the expectations? What else? When you were a student, you walked in, what did you want to know the first day of class?
I'd like to know something about the instructor.
I'd like to know something about the instructor. Who they are?
Yeah.
Maybe? What else do you want to know?
Well, their interests and how I could just engage with them, like how comfortable I am with them.
Great. How comfortable I am with them. How can I engage with them? What about here?
I want to know the rigor of the course. Is this a course I'm going to drop?
Yeah. I want to know the rigor of the course. Maybe I don't want to be here after all. Maybe I'm testing things out. And that's really important because there are a lot of students who do come in and they are trying to figure out, do I actually want to stay here? So keep it in the back of your mind too. It's okay if students leave. They're going to do that. They're going to come in and out, and they should be. They're discovering things, and they should have a right to discover those things. Jim?
I want to know if the teacher is committed.
Want to know if the teacher's committed to teaching the class. Can you talk about that a little bit more? What does that mean to you?
I want an instructor that's excited about the material and is interested in me learning and wants me to be successful.
So I'm repeating just so everybody knows so that the videographer can pick it up. But somebody who is interested, is excited about the material, and you can learn from it. There is one more up here.
Is the content relevant to what I actually plan on doing after graduation?
Right. Is the content relevant to where I want to go once I leave the institution? These are all really great things. Don't forget to think about your classes. What would you want if you were sitting in there as a student? What would get you excited to be in that space? Most students, and I think even back to when I was a student, walking into a classroom where I just sat and took notes probably was not the most exciting classroom for me. I wanted to be engaged. I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to figure out how to problem solve differently. Students today are different than you are. That is not good or bad. They are just different. If you look at today's students, the millennials are pretty much out in the workplace. We're on to Generation Z right now. They just do things differently. They have different expectations. They're connected to technology differently than we've ever been connected to technology. They are more comfortable multitasking, which for many of us drives us bonkers when they sit in our classroom and they have their phone and their iPad and their computer out and maybe one earbud in. But that's how they're functioning. So remember that students come with certain experiences that they expect to have when they're in the classroom, and it may not jive with the way in which you think about how it should happen. Just keep remembering it's not good or bad, it's different. How do you work to connect with them, and how do you help them also connect with what your style is and the things that are important to you? One of the things I think that we always recognize is there's never a more important time to make a good first impression than on the first day. As human beings, we make judgment calls on individuals within a matter of seconds. As an instructor of a class, you're not just being essentially judged, if you will, on who you are. Students are taking that opportunity to also judge, what's this class going to be like? And on that very first day, they're also essentially setting themselves up to say, how am I going to engage with this class for the rest of the semester? That first day, if it's dull, the students likely will say, well, maybe I don't have to work so hard. Maybe I don't have to show up. Maybe, based on how the faculty member presented things, they're really not going to be as rigorous, who asked me that question, and I'll probably be able to blow most of this off. So it's bigger than just who you are. It's how they perceive your class and whether or not they actually want to stay engaged in what your class is all about. I want to reference this site. I really encourage everybody. I'm actually going to use a lot of information from this recent article. If people haven't seen it, it's really good. And I wanted to start differently because I think there are a lot of important points that came out of this article. Again, you'll get this as a part of the slides, but go in and read it. There's a lot of other links that take you some other really good pieces of information that might help you think about your first day of class. There's kind of 4 principles that the author talks about in terms of how do you think about that first day of class, and we're going to hit all 4 of them. The first one is curiosity. What does it mean to you when I use the word curiosity? Desire to learn. What else? Somebody in the back. Anybody? One more time. Discovering new things. There you go. It's what we want to stimulate in them. When you think about curiosity, one of the things to think about is on the very first day, how do you stimulate curiosity of your students? The first thing you should not do is don't hand out your syllabus. You hand out your syllabus and it sets a tone for, guess what? These things are really all we're going to focus in on. What you want to do is you want to engage them as quickly as possible. So think about it this way. So I'm a faculty member in Fisheries and Wildlife. I taught a variety of courses. One of the things that I should think about is, why am I excited about fisheries and wildlife? Why am I in this discipline? How do I engage my students on the very first day in the excitement of what fisheries and wildlife is all about? I can guarantee you it is not by saying, hi, welcome to FW 101. The class meets at this time. Here are the expectations. Here's how you're going to be graded. Those are all important facts, and you can get to them later. But what you really want to do is grab their attention and help them understand why you are committed to it, the discipline or the area that you're talking about, and how they can get excited about being engaged in it. So we'll come back to don't hand the syllabus out on the first day. It is important, but there's other things that can really change the tone of the class on the first day. The next thing that I want to talk about is community. There we go. On this campus, we have a lot of work to do around building community. We are a big institution. We've had a lot of traumatic events that have happened in the last couple of years, and we need to figure out how do we collectively come together as a community. When you think about being in a community, what are the things that are important to you? Yeah.
Shared values.
Shared values. What else? Say it one more time. Safety. Transparency.
Peer support.
Peer support. Sorry? One more time. Integration. Thank you. How about on this side of the room? You guys are really quiet, so I'm going to pick on you some more. Like you belong. That you're not the only person, right? So how do you go about building essentially a sense of community in your classroom? Did anybody pay attention to what I was doing as you were all walking in? I was walking all around talking to you. I got the chance to meet Barack to find out that he's going to be defending pretty soon. I got the chance to meet a bunch of new faculty in the College of Engineering. My goal was, if I can break down some of those barriers about who I am, what's going to happen with the students moving forward? They're going to want to engage with me more. I'm not going to be as fearful to them. We all recognize that we're just human beings, but I'm going to share this with you. In the role that I sit in, I still consider myself a faculty member in Fisheries and Wildlife. I would put money on it that many of my colleagues don't see me as a faculty member in Fisheries and Wildlife. They see me as a member of the administrative team of the college. And that carries a very different presence. So how do I break that down and say, hey, we're working together on this? And part of that is making yourself human to people. It's sharing things like, I'm a co-owner of the Green Bay Packers. I was nervous to come in here today. It's okay, and I've heard this from many, many students, especially in the last year. We just want to know that you have feelings and that you care about us. Greet each of your students. So I was trying to get to everybody, and in a class of 600 students, that probably isn't possible. But there are ways to still engage students. In a big classroom, you can make your way to some of them, and you can make your way to different ones as each day goes on. It's all about creating that atmosphere of welcomeness for them. Nobody likes icebreakers, right? Nobody. I could just feel all of you go like this. She's going to make us talk to one another. But it's important to have some kind of an opportunity for the students to interact with one another, because all of you said it broke things down. I feel like if I came back tomorrow, at least I'd know one more person. Maybe it got rid of some of that awkwardness. At least I knew somebody else and could feel comfortable coming back. So whatever that needs to look like, think about how you can engage them even for 5 minutes in the classroom. One of the other things I think is really important is how do you engage them again? We talked about this a little bit, but in learning on day one. So don't freak out, but how do you ask your students to try a cognitive task before they are ready? How do you get them to be engaged? So let's just say, I know we're in STEM disciplines, but let's just take something out of STEM. If I'm teaching a writing class, maybe the thing that I want to do is on the very first day, I want the students to write, because I'm engaging them. And what you can also do as a part of engaging them in that writing activity is you can get some kind of a barometer on, well, where are they exactly? How might I then turn around and tailor what's coming in the next day and the next day and the next day? So think about it as very multifaceted in the way in which you engage students in an activity. If problem solving is a huge part of the class that you're teaching, or they're going to use it in a lot of different ways, what kind of a problem solving activity might you engage them in? And then you can collect it. You can collect it from no points, just something that gets them to think about it. We still have not talked about the syllabus. So all of this is really setting the stage for the first day of class, or for the rest of the semester, I should say. Think about also asking your students these questions. What kinds of learning strategies could be successful for them in the course? Students learn differently. I was actually leading a discussion the other day. I am a visual person. I am an organized person. So when people are talking, and I can't actually physically get it down on paper, it's like I don't even know what to do with it. So for me, I have to think about it a little bit differently and be able to then pull my colleagues along with me so we can all be a part of the conversation and the discussion, because we all have different learning styles. What kinds of support do they need from us? That might be out of the classroom support. That might be, are your office hours actually hours that make sense for the students on a whole? If you hold office hours at 8 a.m., I can guarantee you how many students will show up. 0. Because I used to hold my office hours at 8 a.m. I've tested this. Nobody shows up at 8 o'clock because they're all sleeping, because they were all working late or partying the night before. So think about, what do the students really need? And even though, we have a lot going on, we have a lot of demands on our time. So 8 o'clock may work great for you, but if all of your students aren't engaging with you, it's probably not the best strategy for you to take on. So I'll end there on this piece of it, but I think it is important for you to really, really engage students in a lot of different ways on that first day. Now, who set expectations were important? Scott did. Scott wanted to know, how do I set expectations? I want to know what the expectations are. How am I going to be graded? What kind of work am I going to have to do as a part of this particular class? One of the things that I will encourage you to do, and I'm going to show you actually a guide that the university has put together for putting a syllabus together and the things to list out. Every one of you, at a minimum, if you have not been aware of this, you need to find MSU's Teaching Code of Responsibility. It's pretty short, and it doesn't provide as much information as one would like to have in there, but at a minimum, make sure that you are well aware of what that is and what that says. It talks a lot about the syllabus. Well, it talks mostly about it in about 8 or 9 bullet points, but there's more that you can add into a particular syllabus. When you do get to your syllabus, I have seen them anywhere from 1 page to 32 pages long. Yeah, no joke, 32 pages long. That's too long. That's right, and they don't read it. So one of the things to think about is when you are going over the syllabus, highlight the most important parts on there. Some faculty take on the strategy too of, they might have a sheet that the students sign that says, I've read the syllabus, I understand the components of it, to ensure that the students actually are verifying that they actually saw it. Now, have they completely read it? Probably not. But it's there for them, and they're at least aware of what that syllabus is. One of the things that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about with you is also, okay, what do we do on the first day of class, other than the syllabus and kind of all these other activities? So, how many of you who have taught before actually check your room out before you show up? It's awesome. So, it's really important to do this. Why is it really super important to do that? Because you need to check to see if everything's going to work the way it's supposed to. The number of times that I have sat in on meetings or other events, somebody hasn't checked the technology. I just did it the other day. Walked into a meeting with the dean's group, and the damn technology didn't work. and it put everything behind. On the first day of class, you don't have your technology set up well, the students are going to check out. They have an expectation that the technology is going to work and you're going to know how to use it and it's going to be up and running. So I actually showed up in here 45 minutes before this morning because I just wanted to make sure everything was set. I wanted to get a lay of the land. I wanted to see what the room was. I've been in this room, but I wanted to see if anything had changed. I wanted to make sure that Dave was going to be here because Dave's videotaping all of this. The other thing that people forget to check oftentimes is, so there's a chalkboard back there. Is there any chalk in the room? There's a whiteboard. How many times have you walked in with a whiteboard and the markers don't work and you have no backup? It's checking everything. And because we live on a campus that is so big and so many people are using them, you should really anticipate things will probably not be available or not work. And so give yourself enough time to get into the classroom to ensure that it's where you need it to be. I've walked in multiple times where I had to wing it. You know, I'm a good one of these kind of people talking with my hands, but after a while you can only talk so long with your hands. One of the things I would encourage you to also do is every one of you has access to your student roster. Where's Corey at? How many days ago did I ask you for who all was going to be here? Saturday. I want to know who is going to be here. I wanted to get a sense of, okay, do I know some of these people? Which colleges are they coming from? Now, you can't get a lot of information off of your roster, but what you should get a good sense of is you're going to see the student's name on there. You're going to know what their level is, if they're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. There's important information that you can pull. Do you have a gender balance within your classroom? And it might get you to think a little bit differently about how you actually approach things as you move forward when you're in the first day. Okay, let's talk about wardrobe. This is an important one to talk about. We'll talk about it in kind of two different ways. I'm going to tell you a story first of all. So, fisheries and wildlife. I have fisheries and wildlife colleagues. I'm a wildlife biologist by training. I do nothing related to that at all anymore. I had the pleasure of being able to teach my very first class, full on teach it when I was actually a graduate student. I was a PhD student. Every day, because fisheries and wildlife, you spend a lot of time outside, you get dirty a lot, those kinds of things. My comfort of dress was a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. And I was, at the time, 26, 27 years old. Does that sound right, Scott? You think it was less than that? Okay, even less than that. And I was like, all right, well, can I walk into the classroom with jeans and a sweatshirt on, and will anybody know that I'm actually the faculty of record in here? So I didn't go in the first day in jeans and a sweatshirt. I literally, if I remember this right, I went and got a haircut. I actually bought dress clothes, and I bought multiple outfits. I actually wore a business suit to the first couple of days of class. Because, and while I do love my FW colleagues and the students who are in there, a young female in a classroom that is dominated primarily by white men, I had to think very differently about how I would be taken seriously in the classroom. It didn't help that I was, Scott said, 26, 25 the first time, because guess what? I looked just like them. So part of your dress is important in terms of the messaging that it sends to students. I even thought about it today when I walked in here. I was like, okay, so should I get dressed up? I mean, I'm pretty casual. There's a method to my madness on a certain level of my casualness because I do work with students, and I also know showing up in a business student and having students feel comfortable with me can really be distracting for them. They don't feel like they can be vulnerable and have hard conversations when I'm in a suit. But if I'm wearing something more casual, we can engage in that. For the men in the room, one of the things for you to think about is you do have a lot more flexibility about how you come into the classroom, but the tone how you set things in terms of how you dress is also important. There is an enormous burden on women and other minorities in terms of setting their prominence and presence and their authority into the classroom. The other thing for you to think about is I had colleagues of mine who said, I'm really comfortable with my students calling me by my first name. How many people are comfortable having your students call you by the first name? Just take a look around the room. Keep your hands up. So it's not even, right? There's many of you, but I'd say there's probably half of you. I think you have to decide, what are you most comfortable with? Obviously, our graduate students are different. Many of us interact with our graduate students on a first name basis. I tested this one time. I let students call me by my first name one semester, and the next time I taught the class, I was like, this is not working for me. So it became Dr. Milaba or Dr. M. That was very, very purposeful because I was getting a lot of pushback from students who did not see me as the one who was responsible for content delivery and also for the assessment. The one thing that I would encourage all of you to think about is talk with each other, especially those individuals who are in your same department. Share what's going on or how you prefer to be addressed in the classroom so that others can reaffirm that. Because it's important for our peers to recognize us the way in which we're asking our students to do that. Now, if you're out of a space where your students are not, or if you're out and students aren't there, of course you can handle things differently. But I've watched people where it's Dr. So-and-so, this is Dr. So-and-so, or greeting within emails. And sometimes that is really important in terms of, again, setting that stage for the students. Yep, please.
Do you have to tell the students what to call you? I mean, I usually don't tell them, but so most of the time they would say Dr. Liba or something. And I wouldn't, and if one or two people call me by my first name in their emails, I don't go to correct them. So
That's a really good question. Cho's asking the question of, do you actually tell the students how you want to be addressed, or do you just kind of let it happen organically? Where is everybody on that? What do you think? Yeah?
I think it's really, because a lot of different professors have different perspectives on what they should be called, I think it's a good idea to say, hello, I'm Dr. Joshua Nahum. You can just call me Josh. Here are my preferred pronouns. I don't see that any harm in giving that information to the students.
Yeah.
A lot of students will still call you Dr. Nahum if you say first name, but that's fine. But there's a lot of students who are really uncomfortable with how to address you, and so I would say having that, on an early slide on your first day or something helps students with communicating with you.
So I heard two really important pieces of information of yes.
So what I meant was, I have a slide to introduce myself,
Yep.
but I don't say you can call me and so on. I just have the introductory slide. And I wasn't sure if I have to tell.
I think I would encourage you to tell the students what your preference is. The other thing that you brought up too is gender. What is your preferred pronoun? How would you like students to address you? Because if you think about it, so I'm going to go back to how I was raised, right? My teachers, my family friends were Mr. and Mrs. This is Mr., this is Mrs. Today's students, when I think about my stepson, I was Kelly to all of them. So they're starting from a very different starting point than what I did. So I might find it super disrespectful that a student comes in and starts calling me by my first name, but if that's how they were raised, why would I expect it to be different? So it is important, I think, because not all of the students in the classroom are coming from the same context. There might be cultural norms for some of the students on how you reference someone. Get it out of the way. Take care of it for them. Tell them what they need to know so that they don't question it or wonder on that. Other thoughts on that? Anybody? Yeah, please. And then we'll go over here.
So I always address it the first day of class. But you mentioned it a little bit, but I make sure that my TAs know that I want to be called Dr. Mack by the students, so that they refer to me as Dr. Mack whenever they're talking about me, because once they start calling me by my first name, then it's sort of a slippery slope, and I've lost how I want things to
Right.
sound.
So you brought up a really important one, which is where do TAs play in this? And also having a conversation ahead of time with your TAs to ensure that how you are being addressed is consistent and that they do that. Corey, can I have you run over to, same thing? Okay, sorry. I walked up to you because I have my microphone on and wanted to pick you up in there. Other thoughts on that? Yeah. Oh, hold on just a second. Wait, I got to get Corey's going to run like crazy to get down here.
Hopefully I don't fall down these steps.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to know, when you're telling your student that they should call you doctor something, and then how you should address your students, because this generation, like sometimes we brought up just calling the students dear Peter or whichever, but this generation, they don't really prefer dear.
Yeah.
Is it better to just call them by names, or how should do?
So the question is, how do you actually address your students? So I'm assuming since you used the word dear, it probably is in terms of written communication primarily. Yeah, so how many of you have gotten an email from someone that's, hey, can you help me with this, right? How's that make you feel? Yeah, not the greatest feeling. I'm like, really? I actually have a name. I would encourage in the written, and also it's when you have to look up what the letters actually mean. Like the first time I got LOL on something, I was like, love of life? What is this exactly? So what I would encourage you to do is when I think about engaging with people, I do my best. I even have to catch myself because I often will start a sentence, Lisa, da-da-da. And what I need to do is, it's actually more respectful to say, dear Lisa, or hi Lisa, something that feels a little bit more engaging. Because if it's just somebody's first name, it feels a little bit abrupt. And I want to make sure that there's a conversation that can actually occur across the email as well. Other thoughts on that? Yeah, Mike, and wait till Corey comes down to you.
Hi, Kelly. So, I can be an inappropriately casual person. But I did raise my hand in saying that I invite them to call me my first name, and I used to, and I don't anymore. And the reason why I don't is so many experiences with female colleagues where they have to establish their authority in the classroom, and it's just conferred on me. And I feel now that if I say, well, you can call me Mike, I'm contributing to this artificial distinction between male and female colleagues where the men are the cool, casual ones, and the women have to enforce their authority in the classroom, and I don't want to contribute to that as part of our community, so I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a really important observation. Can everybody on that side of the room hear what Mike had to say? Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you just stand up and say it one more time, but real loud?
Sure. So my classroom voice. So I used to be someone who, I don't care for titles, and I was, tell students, yes, you can call me by my first name. I don't do it anymore. The reason I don't do it anymore is because it contributes to an artificial distinction between male and female faculty, where we know that females have a harder time establishing and having their authority respected in the classroom. And if I'm contributing to this community that basically says the male faculty are the cool, casual ones you can sort of come at and approach us on a first name basis, but the women aren't, then I'm actually contributing to creating a culture that I want to not have here at MSU. So that's why I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, great. I saw some hands come up. Yes. Wait till we get a... And in your big, loud outdoor voice, too, please.
Okay, so basically we have to remember that we are training these students to become professionals. And so the classroom should be respected the same way you will respect a professional environment. So I even go to the extent of telling my students, if you are writing an email and you want an answer, then write that email professionally. Don't text me by email, because if you text me by email, I'm not going to answer it. So part of what we are training the students for is to leave here and become very successful. And I think we have a responsibility to try to establish some of that.
That's a great point. I appreciate you sharing that. What I would like to do now, because I've been talking way more than I ought to be talking, is yes, I'm going to make you all feel uncomfortable because you're going to have to talk to the person sitting next to you or somebody sitting in front or behind you. What I would like you to do is, in a conversation and with somebody, try to force yourself to talk to somebody you don't know. Talk about how will you walk into your first day of class next week. And yes, it is next week. Week from today. Don't forget. Wednesday's Monday. Just to add for the confusion. Just based on the things that we've talked about, what I'd like you to do is think about how are you going to walk into your first day of class? How are you going to set the stage for it? And I'd like you to talk that through with the person standing or sitting next to you. I'd also like you to spend a little bit of time talking about the class that you're teaching. So let's just say problem solving is something that's really key for your particular class during the entire semester. What kind of an activity or what kind of a problem or whatever might you do in the first half an hour of your class that will really get the students excited about being there and also thinking about long-term learning throughout the semester? What I'm going to do is I'm going to let you have at that for about 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to come back and have a couple of people just share back what you came up with. Do I have the time right? That clock is really super wrong. Okay. So let's go ahead and take 15 minutes. While you're doing that, grab more food and drink and all of that kind of thing, and then we'll have people share.
So on the first,
If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap once. If you can hear the sound of my voice, clap twice. See how good you guys got? That was twice. That was only the second time that you did it. So what I would like to do is I'd like to get a volunteer from each of the three parts of the room to just give us what did you talk about? How are you going to go into that first day of class? Don't be shy. And then where's Corey? Because I need Corey to run around with the microphone. So to help Corey so that she's not running a marathon today, we're going to start on this side of the room. So somebody over here, who would like to volunteer? If I bribe you, I don't have one with me, but I'll bribe you with the dairy store coupon if I have to. I can send it to you.
There's also cookies in the back.
Yeah. John, way to go. I'll send you a dairy store coupon. And John, can you stand up and really project too? Because that actually does not amplify.
My name is John Kirk. I'm with Julia, and we talked about our classes coming up, and I talked about a couple of ideas that I had in relation to ideas that Kelly had suggested, and trying to see how many of them were.
Hold this one too.
See how many were consistent. See how many we could improve on. When we started talking about Julia's class, we started getting into areas of common interests, and there's a decent chance I'm going to come and guest lecture in her class. And we got a little distracted from the first day issues in her class.
That's all right.
We may come back to that.
We'll take that. I'll go with this. Okay, who else? Middle. I'll take this, Corey, with me. Somebody in the middle. Who wants to go? Seriously, I'll get you a dairy store coupon too. Awesome. That means you get to go as well. You want to stand up too.
Hello, everyone. This is my first week on campus. A lot of new faces.
Yay!
But when we were talking about our first day of class, there was an emphasis on being very, very clear about the expectations for academic dishonesty, and making sure they know the consequences, as well as that it's going to be an emphasis, and you're going to be looking out for it, and just to kind of nip it in the bud right away.
So are you going to do any kind of an activity that's going to talk about that as a part of your first day?
No, not so much. Just the way that the content and the exams are going to be held, I guess, lessens the chance of traditional academic dishonesty, I guess. But I guess one form would be, I forgot what you actually asked me. But just making sure that they don't use like smartphones, don't have smartwatches on like David here. Yeah, just to kind of minimize that.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, how about somebody on the other side of the room? We want to let's hear from you. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Yolanda Anderson.
Yolanda, so what are you going to do on the first day of class?
We had an interesting discussion because I teach a large enrollment class. So there are just a couple of instructors for all 50 some odd section, and each section has 30 students. So we have 1,500 students. So we can't go to every class and we can't meet every student. So we hope, meaning the two of us, that we'll have a Zoom session at every time slot. So at any one time slot, there are at least 5 sections going on, and we can actually meet the students and say, hey, you actually do have instructors, it's not just the teaching assistants. In my group, it was 3 of us, based on what they do during the first days of class. It got me thinking on what other things I could do during this Zoom session and talk about why the class is important, connect the dots, give them examples of what they can do after the class, because I teach one of the most hated classes on campus, and students just, they hate it. It's CSE 101, so they just absolutely hate it. And now with CSE 102, it's a completely different course, and now they're doing Python programming, and they're like, why? So if we can just connect the dots, I think that will help the students realize that there are instructors, we do care, and even though the teaching assistants are in front of them, there is something they can get out of it and come see us at the same time.
That's great. Thank you. Great. Thanks, everybody. Those are some really, and I'll give this to you, Corey. Those are some great things to be thinking of. And I hope that what you'll also do is, since you've met each other, that you, oh yeah, I'll get you a Dairy Store coupon too. Make sure and leave me your name so I've got it, and I'll send them to you all. Really some important things for you to think about. And I really like the idea, too, of using the Zoom technology. That is a really fabulous way to be able to connect with a lot of people in very short order. So if anybody hasn't ever used Zoom, it's really super easy to use, and you can connect a lot of people in there. One of the things, Yolanda, that I also wanted to bring forward that I think was really important that you talked about is, okay, so then what happens after the first day of class? And I think if I heard you correctly, one of the things that you talked about is, now how do I take what happened on the first day of class and string it together throughout the remainder of the semester? That is really important for you to think about, how am I going to, as the semester goes on, keep pulling my students back to the beginning of the class? What did you actually deal with on the first day of class? Walk them through. It may not be a walking completely through, but it's reconnecting them with what's the purpose? Why are we doing this? How does it all seem connected? Because one of the things I think we know about our students too is they do have some challenges sometimes connecting all of the information together, and it's important for you to also show them. We tend to also operate in a space where we do a lot of expecting students to know certain things. And Scott, it kind of goes back to your question about setting the expectations. Don't hide things from students. Somebody also used the word transparent. What are the expectations? Tell the students what your expectations are. Tell them how they are going to be graded. Make sure that they know what academic dishonesty is and what you're going to do about it if academic dishonesty does occur. So I'm actually going to flip forward. Actually, I'm going to get out of here. I'm a Mac user, and so this is all kind of interesting for me to get myself in here. One of the things a lot of folks are really interested in, and I brought some copies of things for you. Now, what I brought as copies it's not this, because this is 11 pages long. But there are a lot of different opinions about what you should include as a part of your syllabus. What MSU's Academic Advancement Network did is they actually collected a whole bunch of information to try to put what you should think about on your syllabus all in one spot, in one place. And there's a link on my slides that will take you right to this so that you can get in there and take a look at what's encouraged. As a part of the teaching code of conduct, if you will, some of the basic pieces of information that are there are when does the class meet, where does the class meet, how will you evaluate, etc. But it's pretty minimal in terms of what's expected. And this is essentially right here. This part is what's held in the teaching code of responsibilities. So that's why some people can get away with a one-page syllabus, because they don't put a lot of information in there. Now, I would recommend that this is not all you should include in a syllabus. Students want to know more. Within the College of Ag and Natural Resources, we're not quite there yet, but what we wanted to also do, and what our Teaching and Academic Policy Committee is actually working on, we found that a lot of faculty, the syllabi had been getting really, really long, 32 pages long. But there are common policies that should be applied universally. And what we're working toward is, can we create a space that actually shows where all those common policies are, so that the syllabus can focus in on what are the teaching, how are you going to evaluate, what are the activities that the student's going to get into, what's the class itself going to look like? What we found is that there's been a lot of differences of interpretation of some of the policies, and so a student might go to class A and faculty member A might handle an issue this way. They go to class B and faculty member in class B handles it a completely different way. So for those of you who are in A&R, that's something that we're going to be pushing forward this year to try to actually make this a little bit easier for faculty to just really be able to focus in on the content of the course. For those of you in engineering or Briggs or NatSci and anybody else that might be represented, it might be something that if you guys have representatives in your college, we could all talk about and ensure that that's actually happening. Because I think that will improve a lot of the challenging situations that faculty find themselves in when there is a disconnect between how faculty are actually applying different things. So, if you actually look at this, this will actually take, I think I can get this going here. This will actually take you through what is a well-designed syllabus? What are some of the required components of the syllabus? And I would encourage you to all follow in this as much as possible, because it talks not only about evaluation, like how you'll be evaluated, if it's going to be maybe like say quizzes, etc. One of the things that we want or we hope to push people to is help the student understand what are they going to learn as a part of the class. So what are the learning outcomes? Hopefully, most of you have had conversations, at least within Ag and Natural Resources, about learning outcomes. Learning outcomes set the stage for everything. Why certain activities are happening in your classroom. They also link into how you look programmatically about whether or not this class is still fitting in within what you want your students to know once they graduate. So your course outcomes should be linked in to the programmatic outcomes that you have as well. There's a lot of information up on the STEM Teaching Essentials workshop. If learning outcomes feels like a foreign concept to you, I know, was it all of last year, Corey, I think, that learning outcomes were the focal for the workshop? Yeah. And you have a resident expert in Corey Feta Hartley on backward design. She taught me everything I know about that, in terms of how to think about writing those learning outcomes in a way in which students really understand why they're taking the class and what they will hopefully be able to know and do when they leave. Other things that I would encourage you to think about too is, what's the attendance policy that you have for your class? Different people have different policies. Some people say students have to sign in. In large classrooms, a lot of times folks will actually go use classrooms where students have to swipe their ID cards, but there's a challenge with that, right? I can take 10 ID cards and put them in my pocket and swipe them all, and the student's there. So there's pros and cons to that. And other folks will say, I really don't care. They're adults. They can show up. I'm not going to keep track of this. But one of the things you may want to think about is you can actually use attendance in a different way. It may not have to be a sign-in sheet. Maybe things that you're doing might be, well, I'm going to do 10 small things during the semester as checkpoints that will allow me to collect student information to get a better sense of, well, who's actually here, how have they been participating, that kind of a thing. The other thing that I think we don't spend enough time on is also talking about how much time are we really expecting our students to spend outside of the classroom? How much work will they need to put in once they're done? We're moving to very different models of instruction. No longer, for the most part, are we having a talking head like me standing up here just yakking. A lot of this is we're moving into flipped classrooms, we're really engaging students in very different ways, but students may or may not know how to make sense of that in terms of what's the extra work or how are they supposed to prepare for that. So again, it's all about transparency for the students and to help them understand what might happen within your particular classroom. One of the things that, and I'm going to share this because I think it's an important part of what people do include in your syllabus in some place. And this is where we in our college see most of the challenges that come forward. One is an inconsistency in grading. So as an example, someone will say, well, this is how I'm going to evaluate, and then the way in which it's either scored or the number of things that are being scored changes throughout the semester, and students haven't been alerted to that. So it's important, especially from a student's perspective, they care deeply about their grades. Sometimes we all cared probably more about our grades than we needed to. It's a lot of anxiety. But that clarity is really important for the students. And if it changes and they're not aware of it, you've just lost credibility with them. The other thing that we see roll through our office is issues on plagiarism. And it's really important that there's messaging around. A lot of our students don't know what plagiarism is. In this day and age, when you can go to Google, type something in, a lot of students will say, hey, look, if the information's already out there, why can't I just copy and paste it? Well, then let's help them understand what plagiarism is, what it means, what happens if a student is caught plagiarizing, so that they understand it. Because we're seeing more and more students really not understanding what plagiarism is. Even when you ask them, they can't describe it. The last one that I would say is as a focal area where we also see problems come in is students who have, they might go through the Resource Center for Persons with Disabilities to get a visa for maybe extended test taking time, etc. For a student to go to the Resource Center for Persons with Disabilities, oftentimes there is, it's difficult for the students to go there. And it's difficult for them, many of them, to even want to accept that they need a visa or it would be in their benefit to have a visa. So it would help to destigmatize students who need a visa. It's no different than saying, let's destigmatize students who might be food or housing insecure. If we talk about it, and if we make the information just available to everybody and they don't have to ask about it because you're just talking about it, it actually is easier for them to be able to go and get the resources and the support and help that they need because they now know, here's my contact information to go to RCPD. The other thing is that faculty, if you do get a visa, remember, students for an accommodation, students have to have a visa for you to do an accommodation for them in the class. You are not required to accommodate, and you can, but you are not required to accommodate a learning disability unless a student has essentially a visa. I would encourage all of you, though, students have lives as well. So in a different way, so outside of the Resource Center for Persons with Disabilities, the last thing that I see in our office that is, I would say, frustrating for me to see is students who may have, say, a death in the family, or they may have an emergency, and faculty not being willing to work with that student. It's important that you set things up with your students about what will your expectations be. How would you like to be treated if you had a death in the family? Do you want someone to help you in that accommodation? That's up to you as the faculty member to set the tone there. I would hope that we all treat our students with respect and try to help them work through a difficult time. But the students that come into our office, those are some of the main things that they come in and talk to us about and frustrations that they have. It's a lot of it's around grading, a lot of it's plagiarism, their visa status, and then issues related to family emergencies, those kinds of things. So keep all of that in mind. I purposely have not gone through everything on the syllabus because I wanted to leave a little bit of time before we wrap things up for just an open roundtable conversation, discussion, helpful hints. There are people here who are first time teaching at MSU, and there are people here who've been here for 30-some years teaching. Guidance, thoughts, advice, questions that all of you might have. And Corey, can you run around? Corey, Greg's over here in this one.
Even though I've been here a long time, I'm looking for it.
And use that one too, because that one's for the two-fisted.
Even though I've been here a long time, I'm looking for advice on that interface between technology and engagement, use of clickers in the classroom. So Kelly or anyone here who has that experience, I'd like some conversation on that.
So, thanks, Greg, for that. So, thank you. Stephen Thomas, would you like to speak on clickers by chance? Do you want to use this?
I'll try.
Okay.
So I guess the guidance on which technologies to use are always the question, but I think even your first initial thought of bringing clickers in is really about how are you engaging classes and even large classes in active engagement in your classroom. And so there are lots of different strategies you can use for leveraging that, like having people being able to talk with partners and then it being able to output something. Laura Bix has some data showing the ability to connect people, to have a feeling of connection in the classroom can be aided through group dynamics and clickers, using those as outputs. So there's a really robust discussion with how do you use them, but I think even the initial thought of how do we start having the classroom being an active exercise is, I think that's moving in a great direction for many students.
Stephen, can you also talk at all about some of the other ways in which like clicker-related technology on phones might be used instead of actually clickers themselves?
Yeah, so there are multiple response systems. So on campus, we have two systems that are somewhat supported. So iClickers and then Top Hat is another integrated system with MSU. There are also other technologies that you can use, like using Google Forms or using Microsoft Forms. Those are basically ways that you can create survey instruments that you can deliver with a quick link, like a short URL, that all of your students can pull up on their smart devices. You can collect data, you can have them collect data, and then have a discussion around that. So those are both types of response systems. Poll everywhere, depending on your class size. So some of these are in the nuances of how big your classroom is, how much you're going to ask students in order to either pay for that or not pay for that. One of the benefits of having iClickers is that as an institution, they can buy for a longer period of time and it's not such a financial burden on them. So I know I'm probably rambling on about, but basically there's a lot of discussions you can have around the technologies that you use, but even I think taking that first step about how do you have an active classroom is great.
Great. One of the things too, and I was back on the website, the STEM Teaching Essentials website actually has, I think, all of the years video recorded, and I recall a past video session on using technology in the classroom as well in one of the years, Greg. So yep, go ahead, Corey.
So there's one just from last year that Stephen did called the Frugal Spartan, and it's about using these different technologies that don't cost the students any additional money.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, Puyan.
Thank you for the comment about, the new generation is different. I appreciate that one. I didn't look at it that way. But for me, it's very hard to grasp that when the student has 2 earplugs, cell phone running, how that student can be engaged and never taking notes. My class is all notes. I don't give them PowerPoint. There is a book, but they take notes. I cannot understand how they can be as equal to other students, and my personal experience show different.
Yes, and I think, yes, I don't know how they can do it either, personally. But they have simply grown up so differently from us in terms of how they have to think and operate, that for them, it's second nature. I remember a student that we had in a class that we actually had in DC, and the lead instructor told the students, hey, you have to take notes, and the student said, I can't take notes without my computer. Cursive writing, as an example, is not even taught in school anymore. So it's different, and it's something that they're very comfortable being able to do, and I I can't understand how their brains work, but they do it very successfully. If anybody has more information and can share, that would be great. But I'm always like, it's not good or bad, it's just different, so how do we work with it, and how do we help them continue to learn and grow? A lot of students, too, I know, like if they're walking on campus, because everybody's got their earbuds in, right? Everybody does. There's a lot of students I know that what they're actually doing is they might have a lecture in their ears, or there's a book that they have a chapter to read, instead of reading that they're listening to it. And that's how they're also capturing their information between classes. We'll do one more quick one if anybody's got anything. Yeah, John? Hold on until Corey gets there.
I have a question about the syllabus. On that slide you had up there, it skipped over all this applicable policies, statements, and resources for students. And you were talking about keeping things short and keeping them interesting. But we have this huge amount of boilerplate stuff so I was just looking at my own syllabus the other day, and you got to go really far before you get to the substantive stuff because of all this. And I'm curious, do you have any recommendations for how to present that in a way that is doing what we're supposed to do and also being productive?
So 2 thoughts on that, and I kind of said them earlier. One, I think in your class is on the first day is you hit the highlights. What are the most important pieces of information on the syllabus that you want the students to know? The other, I think, is something that what we're working on in A&R, which is how do we get a lot of the policies and procedures that are applied to everybody in a space in which you may go through it once early on or twice early on as a student, and then when they come into your class, you can say, don't forget, all of that information exists on this website, you should refresh yourself on this. And that's things like the plagiarism policy, whether you take a deferred or et cetera. Is that what you're getting at?
Where do you put it on your syllabus?
So part of what we're trying to get away from is having to have all of it on the syllabus, is to actually get to a location where students are all pointed to it, so that if everybody here was teaching, everybody was using that same language, so that there wasn't a miscommunication about one of those policies. So then the syllabus can handle really more about what's the class about, what the expectations are about, et cetera. So, yeah. So this semester, one of the things I would encourage you to do is there's actually language as you go down here that helps with things like plagiarism, what norms are for your expectation in your classroom. Keep them short, and you can then also provide the links that go into some of those places.
So that it's not at least 4 pages stuff.
Yeah, well, 4 pages is better than 32.
But do I need to still include all the suggested language that's like page long?
So the bottom part right now for the university is what's in the Code of Teaching Responsibilities. That's the bare minimum. Beyond that, that's up to you how far you want to take it. And this will present you with a lot of ideas about what you should think about putting in there, but also recognizing ultimately, even though I don't like talking to the bare minimum, that's your minimum starting point that you have to address.
My head, as you were talking earlier, was maybe just put it at the end.
Yeah.
But still make the point of going over it briefly.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah, that would work as well. Okay. We're out of time, I believe. If I'm correct, Corey, there's reviews for folks to do. Do you want this?
So, Dr. Millenbaugh mentioned sharing your humanness with people. I did not have my glasses this morning when I printed out the evaluation form, so you will notice there is some typed things in there. Please just completely ignore that and fill out relevant to this session your thoughts. Very much appreciate them and need them and change things based on them, and then we'll collect them at the back tables.
And please join me in thanking Kelly for a great talk. Thank you.